I was just thinking a lot of modern game critics online are pretty unreliable. So you're interested in buying the newest game, right? But you're not sure if it's good or not or if it's for you. So what you want to do is that you want to go see or listen to a game critic, right? After all, games are expensive. Not everybody has money to, spend, and not everybody wants to risk wasting their time on a game that they might not like. So one of the best places to see a review is YouTube, right? So you go to YouTube, you look up some game reviews, and a lot of these reviewers are either overly political, inserting their politics into a game that didn't even ask for it, or they're incompetent shells. Sometimes both. Like before I say something that might risk, pissing people off, but then again, I don't really care if I piss off people. I'm going to start with an easy one. IGN. It's funny. Sometimes I'll go and revisit an old IGN review, like something from 2008 or 2009, and I'll see one of the comments saying, back when IGN actually made good reviews. And I'm like, no, IGN has always made pretty terrible, surface level, normie tier reviews that always play it safe. Back then, IGN would just get a lot of crap for giving Call of Duty a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10. But nowadays, I definitely don't trust IGN because IGN are very incompetent when it comes to reviewing games. They have said a lot of stupid stuff regarding game franchises. Like the time when IGN would compare Yakuza games to GTA, even though both games are completely different from one another. Giving Final Fantasy 13 an overly high review score, like that game is awful. It is one of the worst Final Fantasy games ever. Getting mad at Alien Isolation for, I don't know, having smart AI. And who can forget the infamous Pokemon Too Much Water critique? That's such. They make very dumb points. It's almost to the point where I think that IGN just rage baits people because no one could be that incompetent when it comes to media. Oh yeah, and there was also that time when an IGN journalist just straight up plagiarized a smaller YouTube critic. The most recent dumb thing that IGN did was giving Mixtape a perfect 10 out of 10. Mixtape, a game that has no gameplay and terrible dialogue, is somehow 10 out of 10 worthy. I refuse to believe IGN at this point. I wouldn't be surprised if they were paid off shells. Then every other IGN review just gives the game a 7 or an 8 out of 10. Like, they're so boring and predictable when it comes to reviews. To me, IGN is basically the Watch Mojo of video game critique. People don't even watch the IGN videos no more. They just head down to the comments and see what everybody else has to say. And the same complaints I have towards IGN also go to other mainstream popular game journalist outlets, Kotaku, uh, GameStop, or GameSpot. I hate how those names are similar. They're basically just less popular versions of IGN. The only good thing about IGN is that since the reviewers play things super safe, they don't, try to insert their own personal politics into a game, at least from what I've seen anyway. I could be wrong. Like, if you're going to watch an IGN review, at least you don't got to worry about the reviewer crying about woke propaganda or some nonsense like that. And don't get me wrong, certain games, do have a quote unquote woke political bias, but it feels like a lot of anti woke people, they'll just call something woke whenever there's like a minority character or a gay character in it or whatever. But at the end of the day, mass disliking IGN videos doesn't work because IGN does not respond to criticism. IGN is a massive, giant corporation. They don't care if people mass dislike their videos. As long as they're getting views, they're getting money. They don't care about any negative feedback whatsoever. I wouldn't even be surprised if, before someone gets a job at IGN, they get briefed on something like, hey, so people are going to end up hating you in the comments and whatnot, just ignore them. I wouldn't be surprised if they had briefs like that. The best way, to let IGN die is to not watch them and let them drop in views, like with Watch Mojo. But Since IGN keeps making stupid points, is irresistible. People feel the need to go under their videos and watch them and leave a comment. Completely understandable. Which is why I think IGN purposely makes dumb points sometimes to rage bait people. Like I said, they don't care about negative feedback. They just want the views, those clicks, the money. And mean comments actually does help IGN get boosted on the algorithm, and their videos go on people's feeds and all that kind of nonsense. All right, what about people who do video essays and analysis of media? After all, people who do video game essays and analysis, they go into more depth about a game compared to IGN's more surface level reviews. But there's some problems with that. For starters, if someone who doesn't want any spoilers or anything goes on YouTube to look at a game review, they're going to want a non-spoiler game review, right? And the thing about essays and analysis is that they tend to spoil the game. They have to, because they're going into more depth about said game, right? Like, I'm not watching your Elden Ring is disappointing video. I haven't even beaten Elden Ring yet, so I'm not watching that video. Not to mention those annoying essays that feel the need to randomly insert their politics into a game that has nothing to do with said politics. Video game essays are for people who don't care about the game, like they weren't going to buy it anyway, or for people who already finished the game and just want to listen to someone else talk about it, or they're for pretentious nerds and tourists who want to pretend they're a part of something when they're really not, because they have no real experience with said game. Essay videos and analysis for games also tend to come out way after the game has released. So someone who wants to see a non-spoiler game review, they can't really rely on the video essay or analysis, and they also can't even really rely on IGN and other mainstream game journalist outlets. So what else can they rely on? What about the YouTube game critics? Well, I do like Some Call Me Johnny and Thor High Heels. Those are two of my favorite YouTube game critics. The thing is, though, they don't review the most recent game, not usually anyway. Those two critics, they review whatever comes to their mind. Like sometimes just recently, Some Call Me Johnny decided to review some random Sonic game that I never heard of, and Thor High Heels, he covers games that have already released long ago. And I definitely can't count on AVGN for modern game reviews. I mean, that guy reviews games that are super old. And then there are other game critics. I'm going to be honest. I don't like most game critics. And it's not because I have different opinions from them. No, in fact, a lot of my opinions align with the general consensus. The Last of Us is a good game. I agree with that. Yakuza 0 is a good game. I agree with that. Persona 5 is a good game. I agree with that. Persona games in general are good. I agree with that. However, I don't know what I'll try to explain as best as I can, but I still don't like certain game critics, even when my opinions align with theirs. For example, like I'll name some critics that I don't like that come to the top of my head. Skill Up. For about 2 years, I was wondering, why do people call Skill Up Shill Up? And after seeing that mixtape review, I, I'm sorry, but yeah, I do low key. Well, no, actually, I high key. I just straight up think he was paid off to give that game a positive recommendation. And what do you know? He just so happens to have a personal interview with the people who were involved with the game. Well, isn't that a coinky dink? Definitely no financial incentive to give the game a positive review whatsoever. It's not like Skill Up is one of the most popular game critics on YouTube or anything. And then there was that time he didn't recommend the game Lost Judgment. And I'm wondering, well, first of all, he didn't even play any of the Yakuza games, and Lost Judgment is a sequel to the game Judgment. Why would you jump into the sequel Lost Judgment without playing Judgment? Like, that's really dumb, Skill Up. But his criticisms towards Lost Judgment were also really stupid. Like, you're criticizing the game for being too wacky and goofy. Well, welcome to Yakuza. I'm sorry that not every game has to be super serious and super sad like The Last of Us. And then what's the second win? I feel like Yahtzee is, well, he was never a good critic. I mean, what's his shtick? Like, he talks super fast and he's pessimistic. Like, that's really boring. And he also has a habit of just spoiling games out of nowhere too. So screw this guy. I'm glad he's dropping in views and his audience is growing away from him. And I definitely don't trust Video Game Donkey when it comes to video game critique. I mean, thinking that God of War Ragnarok is a great game, like, what are you, five? Then there was that time he gave The Last of Us 2 a positive review score, and he ended up, like, deleting and shadow banning a bunch of comments that, were disagreeing with the review. Like, I remember when that review came out, and so many of the top comments were negative towards the review, and then they just magically disappeared. And his defense of The Last of Us 2 was also really stupid. He said something along the lines of people hate The Last of Us 2 because they don't understand The Last of Us 2. That's stupid because I have seen so many reasonable critiques of The Last of Us 2 that go into, really good depth as to why The Last of Us 2 has a lot of problems. Donkey, it's okay to admit that you just like a bad video game. It's perfectly fine. This is like me saying that Donkey only likes The Last of Us 2 because he doesn't know why he likes The Last of Us 2. I could easily just reverse that same sentiment.
Bacon sandwiches. Smells good. Sure. It's fine.
Oh man. It's got a remaster instead of Jack and Daxter. There are so many issues with The Last of Us 2. I'm actually tempted to replay the game again because it does have fun stealth and combat, when the game isn't forcing you to do another walking section. But I also just want to really point out the flaws with the game because it feels like the characters are all dumbed down and Abby's friends don't really have enough character development or screen time to make me feel bad for them. And calling Assassin's Creed boring, now I can actually understand that. I don't like Assassin's Creed. Like I said, a lot of my game opinions also align with many other YouTube game critics' opinions as well. However, how are you going to call Assassin's Creed boring, a game that lets the player have more freedom with their gameplay, and then recommend something like Uncharted 2? I don't like Uncharted 2. The stealth in that game sucks, and the story isn't that great. The characters aren't that well developed. And yeah, Uncharted 2. It's just a basic baby tier third person shooter. I've seen more creative gameplay in Metal Gear Solid 3 from the year 2004. Girlfriend Reviews is also just a very incompetent game critic. I mean, for starters, she doesn't even play the game. She just watches her boyfriend plays it, which is pretty lazy in my opinion. Like, you can't be bothered to play a video game. Why are you even talking about it? It's like the peak tourist YouTube channel. And I remember that one time when Girlfriend Reviews criticized the game Hogwarts Legacy because, J.K. Rowling bad. But then when they tried to do a charity stream of Hogwarts Legacy, they ended up getting attacked by a bunch of transgender people and, other leftists. And it was super funny. And they pretty much gave in to the toxicity, like they did an apology and all that other good stuff. Also, Girlfriend Reviews felt the need to bring up that she was Jewish for some reason. Like, that's nice, but nobody really cares. Oh my gosh, the completionist. I was not a fan of this dude before the charity scandal. But yeah, the completionist, he has very surface level taste in media. I just feel like he's way too positive. And seeing his downfall, I'm not going to lie, it was really funny and satisfying to witness. Angry Joe, I don't like Angry Joe. I'm sorry. To me, he's just not that funny, and he's also a little too positive. Like giving Skyrim such a high review score, or giving Metal Gear Solid 5 a 10 out of 10. Like, okay, I like Metal Gear Solid 5. It has amazing gameplay and graphics, but the story is abysmal. It is the worst Metal Gear Solid story. Not to mention that it has cut content. It literally has an important cut story mission that was taken out of the game. And in order to experience that mission, you got to watch it on YouTube. Like, what the heck? Not to mention the fact that, to complete Metal Gear Solid 5 story, you got to replay the same missions again. Like, they didn't bother adding in new missions. Not to mention the game's empty open world. But yeah, Angry Joe decided, hey, that's 10 out of 10 worthy. I haven't watched an Angry Joe video in years because he's just really boring, he's just way too positive. And even when he does give like a super negative, angry review, the anger just feels pretty forced, and there's no comedic reliance with the anger. It's not like the Nostalgia Critic or the AVGN. If I want to see an angry review, I'll just watch AVGN. That guy is way funnier and has way better skits. And look, if you're watching this video and made it this far and you like the critics that I just criticized, that's awesome. You do you. I'm just saying, man, I just don't like most game critics. But then again, just like video games, what kind of game critic you like is super subjective. Some people will like Yahtzee. Some people will like Angry Joe or Donkey reviews, and that's perfectly okay. I remember Donkey himself even recommending that you find a game critic that aligns with you. And for me, a game critic that aligns with me are Dora High Heels, Some Call Me Johnny, and the Angry Video Game Nerd. And I'm pretty sure there are a bunch of other game critics on YouTube, but I haven't found any recently that I can really watch or find funny. And I'm sorry to bring up Donkey again, but a common defense tactic that Donkey fans like to use is that, well, he's a comedian. You can't criticize him because he's a comedian. And first of all, I want to point out that just because someone's a comedian doesn't mean they're incapable of making stupid points and being called out for it. But more importantly, just because someone's a comedian doesn't shield them from criticism. I wouldn't even really label Donkey as a comedian. Like, he's not no Robin Williams. He's just a pee pee poo poo meme man who just talks over video game footage. Yeah, I guess we can call that comedy. I would call it baby humor, but not a true comedian in my opinion. If comedians are getting excused from criticism, then that means we can't criticize anyone for being unfunny, according to certain people's logic, right? So I guess we got to give Amy Schumer a pass, despite the fact that she's an infamous joke stealer. Because hey, she's a comedian. Can't criticize someone for being a comedian. Can't criticize comedy. You know what I like about the Nostalgia Critic? He's actually okay with people mocking him. Crazy, right? It's almost as if like just because you say you're a comedian doesn't mean you're excused from mockery or criticism yourself. It's just an insane take. All right, so earlier I did bring up the political aspects of certain game critics. Let's say you want to watch a game review. Okay, well, you can't really trust IGN or other mainstream game journalist outlets, and you can't really watch an essay or analysis video because those are full of spoilers. And, you can watch a YouTuber, although some of these YouTubers that I mentioned are most likely paid off shills or have very basic surface level standards, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with having surface level opinions that aren't really that challenging. But then there are the political YouTuber game critics, or whatever you call them, the left and the right. And I'm going to spare myself some brain cells here. I'm not going to use many examples. But for example, right, the problem with the left when it comes to reviewing games, when they want to insert their leftist ideology into a game, they tend to, ignore the actual game's writing and whatnot. And they usually also have complaints about the game not having enough representation or diversity, which is really stupid. If you want representation and diversity, either A, make your own game, or B, a much more better idea, go outside and interact with people who care anyway. Like, for example, let's look at this video. Well, I'm not going to look at it, but this video made by Extra Credit 14 years ago, Sexual Diversity, How a Queer Character Made Persona 4 Great. Now, this is obviously a very leftist take right here, and it's a very stupid take as well. Like, you're saying that a queer character made Persona 4 great. It wasn't the gameplay, it wasn't the other characters, it wasn't the story, it wasn't the writing, it wasn't, the mini games. It was nothing like that. It was just a queer character. And that's why you think Persona 4 is great, because of one queer character. Well, first of all, this character that's being used as an example, Kanji from Persona 4, is not a queer character. He's not gay. The point of his character is that he likes feminine stuff. That doesn't automatically make someone gay. Ironically, there's a video itself that tries to be all progressive towards, the gay community. Actually comes off as bigoted, because you're connecting femininity to being gay. Not all gay people are feminine. There are masculine gay people. Bigot. But more importantly, Kanji just isn't gay. What a stupid take. And there are plenty of other examples of leftists saying dumb stuff about video games, like complaining about how the character Bayonetta is too sexualized. It's even more awkward and bigoted in a way, because these leftists are trying to insert their Western American politics and apply it to Eastern Japanese politics and beliefs. It's borderline colonialism, don't get me wrong, nobody's getting pillaged or taken over, but in a way, the leftists are actually trying to rewrite and reassign, how Japanese games are supposed to be by wanting to force in their political ideology. Thankfully, as of right now, Japan hasn't really listened to any of these leftists, not as far as I know. And what's so funny about this situation is that whenever a leftist tries to make something that's progressive or overly left-leaning, it always fails. Dragon Age Veilguard, what else? Dragon Age Veilguard, Concord, Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, flop, flippity flop. Nobody wants to buy a game with bias forced in political propaganda. And I'm not saying there's no space for political games. There are plenty of political games that I love. Metal Gear Solid, I don't like BioShock, but I respect it. GTA, Red Dead Redemption. But you know what makes these games with political commentary good? They don't just, constantly talk about representation and trans beliefs. At least with the political commentary in something like Metal Gear Solid 3, the commentary in that game is more important compared to, this game doesn't have enough gay people in it. And then there's the far right game reviewing side, a bunch of fake edgelords who are too cowardly to say the word nigga with a hard R. These are the types of people that see a minority or a woman in a game or a gay person and immediately just call it woke propaganda. It's very lazy criticism, and I'm glad this trend is slowly starting to die. But it's just going to be reborn. You see, this trend is dying because not only do these types of people get called out for misinformation, but, their audience of teenagers are starting to grow up over time. Their edgelord minds are starting to leave the anti-woke mindset. And don't get me wrong, there are games with forced in leftist politics. But, your biggest issue with Spider-Man 2 is that it's disgusting woke propaganda. Why? And why do you need why do you need a movie-length video to call it that, Like, Spider-Man 2 is a very flawed game. They also did make MJ worse, but I wouldn't call it woke propaganda. It takes place in modern-day New York, one of the most diverse places on planet Earth. What do you expect? And of course, it makes sense for Spider-Man to go out of his way to help out some random gay people. Yeah, it's a boring gameplay mechanic, don't get me wrong, but he is called a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Spider-Man helps out random people in the first game as well. Why didn't nobody complain about that? In fact, he helps out other random people. He's a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Yeah, I get it. You don't like the part with him helping out gay people. I get it, because that mission is very boring. But the problem with that mission isn't that Spider-Man is going out his way to help gay people. The problem is that the mission itself, the gameplay surrounding that mission, is boring, and the dialogue is horrible. I'm tired of playing mediocre slop, yet you keep going out of your way to purchase the newest game and call it mediocre slop. Because if you try to review a game that you actually like, like an older game or something, nobody's going to watch you. That's the problem with Synthetic Man. He is a YouTube man child. This dude refuses to go out and get a real job or learn a valuable trade skill. So what he does is that he buys the newest game full price, which contributes to the industry. And then, he bitches and cries about it. It's a very pathetic lifestyle, in my opinion. And the Me on TV is another parasite who often just boils down to calling everything woke propaganda. I remember when this dude made a bunch of videos bitching about Ghost of Yote because why? One writer decided to make fun of Charlie Kirk. Oh, I'm really sorry that one writer decided to use their free speech amendment. By the way, that one writer got fired. By the way, there's also millions of other people that shit talk Charlie Kirk. Get over it. But my goodness, he made so many videos trying to milk the Ghost of Yote hate, which the game, I played the game myself. It's alright, but I wouldn't call it anything like woke propaganda. And you know what's really weird? Enemy on LARPed for the Ghost of Tsushima, but Ghost of Tsushima literally has a bisexual woman samurai who who's like is arguably a girl boss, and her tragic story is about as tragic as Atsu's story in Ghost of Yote. So, yeah, why does that game get a pass? Why does Tsushima get a pass for having the same things that Ghost of Yote had? I believe he also said that the Ghost of Yote character Atsu looked ugly. Well, I looked at Atsu and she looks fine. She looks like a realistic Japanese woman for the time period. Like, what do you want her to look like? Some sort of anime character? Why didn't you apply any of these criticisms to Ghost of Tsushima? Oh, because Ghost of Tsushima was really popular and you don't want to risk pissing off people. And to me on TV is well, to me, he's just a total pussy. Because his takes are just so safe and generic, and he often feels a need to force in politics when they're not needed. And people like Indy Mion have also just ruined the word woke because it feels like nowadays, whenever something has a minority in it or a gay person in it, it's automatically just labeled as woke. Like, what does woke even mean anymore? One thing that anti woke people will say, well, no, no, we don't mean something as woke because it has minorities in it. But then I see like certain people on YouTube who have a lot of influence call something woke for having minorities in it, like Synthetic Man. So what does it mean? Like because I see like a million different definitions for the word woke. It's like is Grand Theft Auto San Andreas woke propaganda now? That's a game where you play as a strong black person who goes around killing white cops. Is Static Shock woke propaganda? Is the Justice League Green Lantern woke propaganda since he definitely replaced the white one? What's woke propaganda now? You know, it's like the word grifter. Like the word woke and the word grifter had just been used and abused to the point where nobody can even give out a good definition anymore. I actually bet money that if something like Grand Theft Auto San Andreas came out nowadays, these people would cry about it being woke propaganda. And this is another stupid title here. Why Western developers are angry about Elden Ring. Who's angry about Elden Ring? That's one of the most praised games of all time. Even developers like it. What's this one right here? Grand Theft Auto 6 just crossed a line in the AA industry. What line was crossed? GTA has always been crossing the line for decades. Back then it was boomers complaining about GTA, causing violence and mass shootings. Nowadays we got these virgin, lonely millennials crying about GTA being woke propaganda. It's just a very pathetic mindset. So we're back at the question again. You want to play a new game, but you're not sure if it's worth spending money on. Can you trust the mainstream game journalist outlets? No, because they are often paid off shells and have very surface level takes. Same for certain YouTubers. And, the YouTubers that actually do make good reviews, sometimes they don't actually feel like releasing, a review for the newest game. A lot of the YouTubers that make good reviews usually review old media. All right, and you can't really trust the left or the far right when it comes to gaming critique because their criticisms towards games are boiled down to stupidity. The left wants more diversity and unnecessary representation. The right calls everything woke and cries about women and gay people. What about those game reviewing aggregator websites, like Metacritic? Metacritic, well, for the critic side on Metacritic, those are the paid off game journalist shows who, have very boring surface level taste. They remind me of clapping seals. And the right side of Metacritic, the user review side, the problem with the user review side is that anybody can pretty much just give a game a 10 out of 10 or a 0 out of 10 without even playing it. Now, Steam reviews, those are a little bit more reliable because with Steam reviews, you actually have to buy the game before you can actually review it. But here's the thing, anyone can buy a Steam game, play it for maybe like 3 minutes, and then return the game and leave a review. Steam reviews also aren't really that trustworthy either because a lot of the times they're always just way too positive. They don't really want to give out criticism. The only time you'll ever really see a mass amount of negativity on Steam is when a game has performance issues or if a game that's known for multiplayer decides to pull some nonsense. But even then, Steam has TF2 fans who are just dedicated to defending TF2's horrible changes. So what I would recommend is look at gameplay footage and look at non-spoiler dialogue. And if the game looks good to you, then go for it. Or better yet, what I would recommend is just forming your own opinion, Like, that's way better than just getting your opinion from a paid-off shill journalist or an anti-woke crybaby or a leftist moron. So those are my suggestions anyway. And, yeah, like for me personally, right, I have the money. I have well over, well, I'm not going to tell you how much money I have. I just have a lot of money. And I could easily pre-order GTA 6 right now. I could even buy GTA 6 on launch. And you know what? I'm not actually going to do that. I'm going to wait for GTA 6 to come out and look at gameplay footage on YouTube and see how well the game performs. And I'm also going to, maybe take a quick gander at the Steam. Well, no, the game won't be on Steam. Never mind. I'll just take a quick gander at some of the more surface level reviews out of curiosity and see what GTA 6 has to offer. To be honest, I'm not buying GTA 6 immediately because I already know that the game is going to need like a million patches before it's actually really good. The same thing happened with Red Dead Redemption 2. If you made it this far into the video, thank you. Why is YouTube recommending me Fox News?